But then one fateful day, one of my brothers brought home a game that would change my life forever. So today, I'm going to take you through a little challenge that I took part in from an amazing company called Crow Hill, where I used nothing but this box, plus a little trip down memory lane. So Crow Hill is a sample library company based in Edinburgh, founded by Christian Henson. Now they make amazing products, but what's even more impressive is that Christian is building a network and community of composers and music makers where anyone can get involved and share samples and network with each other, with the highlight being a weekly podcast which he runs himself. Now it was in one of these podcasts a few months ago, we were having a little show and tell of some of our favourite pieces of gear, where this little exchange happened.
My fun bit of gear that I picked up about 10 years ago was one of these. Roland Sound Canvas SC-88.
Is that like your good purchase?
Yeah, so this thing,
as I understand it, because I've done a bit of research on Midi this week, it's boxes like the Sound Canvas that killed this wonderful concept called Midi, General Midi, but they didn't really have the technology to make stuff that sounded any good. Of which I've always felt that the Sound Canvas it kind of got a bit of a name for itself.
Now he does have a point. From my research and understanding, as much as these units were very well received when they first came out, they very quickly fell behind the times when compared to other units at the time, like the Roland SC-88 and similar offerings from Korg and Yamaha and those kind of companies. And mainly it's because of how the sound is produced in these units. So if you think of modern sample libraries, typically there is a recording that is played back whenever you trigger a note via Midi. For units like the SC-88, they simply didn't have the memory capability to store a massive sample. So what they would do is take the first little snippet of that sample, and then inside the box they would loop it and modulate it to give it that sustain, which gave it a very characteristic warbly or looped kind of sound, which other units simply didn't have to deal with, as they had the memory capability to play back the full sample. For comparison, the laptop that I have here running this setup has 64 gigabytes of RAM available to it. This has 8 megabytes. So if we compare this to modern sample libraries, or even better units at the time, it's clear to see why it very quickly fell out of favour. But this left me with a very interesting question, which is, if this sounds so shit, which it does, why do I love it?
Fool of a took.
To answer this, we're going to have to jump back in time, about 25 years. It's the year 2000. The Millennium Dome opened to disappoint an entire nation. The Y2K bug amounts to absolutely nothing. Big Brother first airs to introduce a new generation to the mind-numbing effects of reality TV, and to access the internet, you had to listen to this. Like most kids, when it got too dark to play out, my evenings were spent playing or watching my brothers play the PlayStation 1. Then one fateful day, one of my brothers brought home a game that would change my life forever. Fantasy VIII. He fired up the PS1 and the sound of impending enjoyment filled the room. I then heard this for the first time. I watched in total astonishment as I saw the most realistic graphics I had ever seen, while my brother ran around the world fighting monsters and then into a fire cave where he fought some fire demon. I mean, for a 7-year-old, what's not to like? I was hooked. Final Fantasy VIII became my life, and I remember for the first time that I ever wanted to listen to a soundtrack. And with a little help from these guys, I was able to sit at a home PC with music blaring out of Winamp because we were too cool for Windows Media Player, while playing with my Final Fantasy VIII action figures. So I tried as many games as I could get my hands on, but they all had one thing in common, and that is how the music was made. At the time, most companies relied on one or a small team of composers using boxes like this to bring their games to life. Like Nobuo Uematsu primarily used this to compose the entire soundtrack for Final Fantasy VIII, which is why I bought one. So these two games were easily my favourite, and I can only assume the reason why I love units like the SC-88 is because my entire childhood was listening to those kinds of sounds. Now, in doing the research for this video, I stumbled upon this, Metal Gear Solid 2, and I'd forgotten that a few years later this game came out. But what makes this interesting is that it featured a DVD making of the game, and this included an interview with composer Harry Gregson Williams. Now, from my memory, this was the first time that I was consciously aware that the job of a composer existed. Like, I must have known it was a thing, but seeing him on screen talking about it made me understand that it was something that you could do. And maybe one day, I could do it too. So going back to this competition, so the challenge was this. We would like you to underscore the opening section of our Midi YouTube film, observing the picture and changes and balance the audio with the dialogue. You can use any instruments you want. And given Christian's reaction to my prized possession, I thought I would do this competition using nothing but this box. Here's how I did it. So let me show you how I hooked this up with Logic to make it work. So first, I have a Midi cable coming out of my 18i8 interface into port A to control the first 16 sounds on the SC-88. I then have another Midi cable coming out of my Complete Control S61 Mark II to control the 16 sounds on bank B. So then, using an RCA to jack cable, I take the stereo output of the SC-88 into inputs 7 and 8 on my interface. So now I need to tell Logic to send Midi into the SC-88, and to do that, you use external Midi. So you want to create a new track, but rather than creating a normal software instrument, if you look down from software instrument, you will see external Midi. Now ignore these settings for a second and just hit create. So I need to make sure that I'm on a stereo track. So for sending into bank A, I want to be coming out of the Scarlett 18i8 on MIDI channel 1, and the audio inputs are 7 and 8. And I also want to boost this because the SC-88 is a little quiet. And now, when I play my MIDI controller, I should hear the SC-88. So this is where it starts to get really cool, especially if you're a nerd like me. Because MIDI hasn't really changed since it's been around, all the control parameters for volume and panning and reverb and all those kinds of things haven't changed, which means I can tell Logic to control those specifically inside the SC-88. So with an external instrument set up on channel 1, let's create a MIDI region using the pen tool at the start of this track. Now open up the event list editor. In here, we can assign different parameters to change. So with program change messages, you can change the sound of the unit. So right now it's set to grand piano. But I could easily change this to any number between 1 and 127, and I get something else. And the other parameter is with the controller change messages. So if we add a controller change message, here we can select all these different things to control inside the SC-88. So these were the controls that I found the most useful when controlling the SC-88. I could select the sound that I wanted. And then the brightness acted as a cutoff. I could change the attack and release time. Pan it left and right. Modulation I had set to the controller down here. Volume and expression, I can set it to be polyphonic and do chords, or monophonic. For whatever reason, the Celeste worked out to be the delay. Chorus effect. Reverb. And then portamento controls. So what really turns this up to 11, especially if you're a super nerd, again like me, is if you have a MIDI controller like mine with lots of encoders and buttons, you can map those to reflect these parameters. So if I was to turn the volume knob, it would show on the controller as well as on the unit itself. And this is a great way to add that human touch and get a bit more expression into very basic or limited samples. So that is how I set everything up to work with Logic. But let me take you through everything that I did from A to B so I can show you exactly how I got all the audio and sound from this box into Logic for a complete and finished project. So I watched back through the video a few times to kind of get an idea of what the subject matter was, and I thought, seeing as we're talking about coding and the 80s and that kind of stuff, that some kind of synthwave 80s pop sound might work very well for this. So I created a template that has 16 channels for bank A and 16 channels for bank B. I then assigned all the different sounds that I wanted and started my composition. I've got a link down below for my entry so you can listen to that and then come back to this to understand what I'm talking about. So one of the fun things that I find when working with external gear is the limitations that it puts on you, and it forces you to be more creative or find more creative solutions to get around problems that are presented. For example, the main sequence in this first section of the video all revolves around this kind of delayed arpeggiated motif. So that is made using sound 82 and having the delay on the unit set to pan 2. You can see here the different levels of automation I went to try and give a bit of character and a bit of movement to these sounds. So one of the limitations on the SC-88 is that although you can have 32 different sounds playing at once, it only has one effects bus, one for reverb, one for chorus, and one for delay, and you can only have one of those things working at one time. So the creative way to get around having the unit set to one delay while wanting to use others is to do something like this. So on this first channel of MIDI, you can see I've set the sound that I wanted, and then the notes gradually get quieter as they go along. And along with that, I've also got the cutoff or the brightness turning down as it goes. And that gives you a really nice fading away delay effect. Something else I did to really help these samples come to life is to layer things up. For example, the kick drum on the standard drum kit doesn't have much depth to it. But the 808 sample does have a really nice low end to it. So when layering those two sounds together, you get a much deeper kick. Something else I did to help the drums come to life a bit more was take every other snare here and to pitch it up. That way you get a bit more of a movement in the drums. So without, the drums sound like this. And with every other snare hit pitched up, you get something like this. So with the composition finalised, I then made the decision that I was going to export each individual track as audio to better manipulate it later on and line it up to the picture. I found that dealing with the MIDI, there was time delays and I was getting MIDI feedback and all sorts of little technical problems that you sometimes get with dealing with older units like this, that dealing with just audio would make mixing down so much easier. This would also give me the control that I wanted on having different delays and reverbs applied to different tracks. Again, something you can't do in this box as standard. So this is a 5-minute piece with about 28-29 tracks. So overall, exporting this out took about an hour's time. Now it is a bit of a stretch and not very convenient. However, for the challenge of this, it was well worth it. So this is everything exported out, and from here I've made a few creative decisions and chopped a few things out and muted a few things, and I've now timed it up with the tempo to match what's happening on the screen a lot better. There's a few things that I just completely took out and deleted, as I always find that I tend to over-compose for a piece and then just remove parts as I need, as you never know when a little snippet or something might work somewhere else. I was adamant that I wanted to keep the sound of this unit to be as true as possible, so I've only really added EQs on most things. There is a bus compressor on each of the sections and a compressor also on the drums. The music bus overall has a little bit of reverb on it, but none of the individual tracks have their own dedicated reverbs or delays. Any delays or reverbs you hear were from the unit itself. I've also used a stereo plugin to take a little bit of the mid signal out, as that's where the voiceover is going to sit in dead center. I've also got a dynamic EQ that is side-chained to the voiceover, ducking out the frequencies of where Christian's voice is sitting, just to help it cut through a little bit clearer. For mixing and balancing the audio that was given with this project, I took the nicer signal, which is this microphone here.
Well, that's the connector at the end.
I then took a match EQ and trained it on that and applied it to the iPhone mic, which does not sound as good. Then using a little bit of compression, de-esser and some fine touching on some EQ, I then used them to balance out the two different mic positions that we had. So hopefully that has given you a little bit of appreciation for some of the older gear, and it can give you an idea of some of the fun challenges you can face when you're trying to incorporate this kind of stuff. It's been great fun jumping back into the SC-88 and reminding myself with these things why I got into music in the first place. Like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Now, to answer that question, we're going to have to jump back in time about 25 years. So I just fell off this. Why was there a screw in my DeLorean? How old are we in year 2000? We 7.